Awesome. So yeah, why don't we get started? I see a great group, individuals from Mississippi to Philadelphia to the Bay Area. Really exciting to see. And yeah, maybe we'll just a couple kind of quick housekeeping items. We definitely want this to be interactive. There'll be a couple kind of quick polling questions just to get a sense of where people are and what's kind of most important to them from a learning experience. If you see, there will also be an opportunity to post things like questions, and please go ahead and do so because we're looking at those for at a point where we have time to kind of open it up to all sorts of questions. So yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. I'm gonna share my screen and hopefully that works. Is everyone able to see some slides here? Looks like it's pulling up just now. And I'll just start by just setting some context on what we'll be chatting today. The focus is on closing the mentoring gap, and we'll talk about what that means. But in particular, I'm really excited to have Leslie Chamberlain from DePaul, as well as Brandee from ASU, chat about what closing the mentoring gap means on their campus. And so maybe to start, Leslie, if you could just briefly introduce yourself, and yeah.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Leslie Chamberlain. Yet I'm here with Alumni Sharing Knowledge program at DePaul, but I also run Alumni Career Services. I'm entering my 3rd year in this role and my 6th year at DePaul. I'm really excited to share with you all. I've learned a lot over my time here in this program, and there's more to come.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. And Brandee, could you just real quick do the same? Just a quick intro?
Absolutely. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, from where you're coming from. My name is Brandee Popaden-Smith, and I serve as our Director for Career Development and Experiential Learning at Arizona State University. I'm very excited to connect today and hopefully share some lessons learned that we've gone through as we've launched our ASU Mentor Network in the past couple months, as well as some of the work we've been doing related to mentoring over the past several years.
Awesome. Great. And yeah, for context, I'm one of the co-founders of the company PeopleGrove here. Shouldn't surprise anyone that the motivation for starting the company was mentors in my own life and how much that made a difference in accessing career opportunities and uncovering things that I wouldn't have known, and also humbled to be learning from partners like Leslie and Brandee. So in terms of agenda, here's kind of quickly what we'll cover. We'll just start with just some context setting. What do we even mean by the mentoring gap? And why is it important to our universities? Then we'll have a really lively kind of Q&A where the three of us will chat about some of these learnings at DePaul and Arizona State. And then lastly, as I mentioned, please do submit questions so that we can cover things that maybe aren't here. But before we begin, I did want to just really quick kind of pull the audience and kind of get your sense of schools, like top research universities. How many do you think mention mentoring in their strategic and presidential plan? Just curious. And we'll just give individuals, a couple, 20, 30 seconds to reply here. And then I'll publish what we're collectively thinking. Almost there, almost at 100%. Okay. So it looks like we've got a fair number of answers of people that said 15%. So interestingly enough, at top research universities, in 65% of strategic and presidential plans, the term mentoring is mentioned. The numbers are more predominant at private universities, which I think is interesting, and we could certainly chat more about that. But I thought this is interesting because it goes to show how important this is to leaders at the very top of our institutions, and why we should be talking about this today. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the results here. And here's the kind of chart on the actual data. So with that kind of context, I'll talk about just what is this mentoring gap. And the short of it is, I think we all collectively know that when a student has mentors on campus that they can count on and rely on, it really helps a student overcome hardships that come up when they transition from high school to college, or being an adult learner to going back to school. And too often students are asked to tackle these challenges alone. And so what the research shows us is that when students do have access to mentors, they're likely to have greater access to career opportunities and social capital that sets them up for lifelong success. It turns out they're also more likely to stay in school. They're more likely to be engaged alumni when they graduate, and they're just more likely to feel like their education is worth the cost. But therein lies the mentoring gap for our company and for Gallup, who did a lot of research, and that was all too few students do have access to a mentor. It's not within everyone's reach. Sometimes it's only those that were born into a familial network that might have that kind of access. And so when Gallup asked students, after 4 or 5, 6 years of going to a school, did they feel like they had a mentor? And the reality is only 1 in 5 said they did. And so I thought I would share a couple ideas from our vantage point in why this gap might exist. And then certainly I'm excited to get Leslie and Brandee's perspective. But from our perspective, part of the reasons that may resonate with you as well is that there's no clear ownership. Like many of our mentoring programs are well-intentioned, but it's not clear if it's coming from student affairs, career services, alumni relations, and sometimes the lack of collaboration actually undermines our collective efforts. Our emails are being ignored by alumni because it's just not consistent. Another key theme that I'm excited to chat more about is that our programs try and implement a one-size-fits-all model for our students and alumni, and sometimes is unable to recognize the diverse need of our student body, the differences between being an international student, a first-generation student, a freshman, or a senior. And so maybe the programs aren't being as personalized as we'd like in an ideal world. And then the last is, while it's showing up on our president's strategic plans, it doesn't always seem like it's a priority. There's an interesting quote from the president of Wake Forest that mentioned that for a lot of career services activities at universities across the country, sometimes it feels like the priority is just below parking. And parking's important, but of course that's a bit disappointing to hear. So last couple of things, and then we'll get started by opening up some great conversation, is, well, what is the cost of this? Like, why does it matter? And there's 4 things that we'd like to point out, and there's probably others. One is, of course, student graduation. That at a university serving primarily minority students, those students that did have a mentor were 3 times more likely to graduate in STEM careers. From an alumni satisfaction perspective, those that had this experience were 3 times more likely to want to donate. And then, of course, the reputational benefits that come from that, and the benefits to the labor market that our students are prepared to succeed. So that's the slides I'd have to share. I just really did want to just set some context, but want to focus the rest of our time on some great conversation. And before I do so, I just have two last polling questions to just provide some context on who's joining us here today. And the question is, what is the #1 goal of your mentoring program? Is it about student success? Is it about jobs, alumni engagement, or something totally different? And we've got about half of the responses in thus far. Interesting. Okay. Just give us 5-10 seconds more here. Okay. So I'm going to close the poll out and just quickly share some results so we can all get a sense of kind of who's here today. So it looks like half the goal is alumni engagement and advancement, a quarter being retention and graduation. So that could give us a sense of who's here in the webinar today. But really interesting that is something that's really top of mind. And then one last just polling question so that we can make sure we talk about this in our panel here. And that is, what are your top mentoring obstacles? And I'm going to go ahead and share that right here. Okay. I'm going to close it out and share it. So it looks like not enough resources to manage the program, lack of full support from a university. So let's definitely in this panel talk about how do we maximize the effectiveness of a program when resources are constrained. Awesome. So yeah, we're going to go ahead then, and I'm going to close this survey out and kick off some good conversation. So we will go ahead and share our screens here. And now you can, I guess, put a face to a voice. Awesome. Glad to see what's still working. You never know with the tech tools out here. And yeah, maybe just to get started, Brandee, could you share with us just a little more context of what your university's mentoring program is all about? Like, who's the audience? What's the primary goals?
Absolutely. So Arizona State University, a very large university, including our online population, we're expected to hit over 105,000 students. So for us, when it comes to mentoring, we really are looking at the entirety of our university, both our on-ground population as well as our online population. And each individual school or college at the university often has a different spin or a different purpose or need behind their mentoring programs. So the great thing about what we took a step back to look at is to say, how do we figure out an opportunity? How do we take advantage of a platform that is flexible enough and understands that with a university our size and so many programs and so many different versions of mentoring across the university, how do we create a space that's accepting and usable for all of those purposes? So for us, our population, it's our entire population. At the end of the day, we're hoping to get every single Arizona State University student engaged in some capacity of mentoring at some point during their time at ASU.
It's a lot of students. That's an audacious goal. Okay, awesome. And Leslie, could you just give us a little context on what the Ask program is all about?
Sure, yeah. So I'm here at DePaul University. We've got around 23,000 as our enrollment. We our population for mentorship is both students and alumni. I will say our population of alumni using alumni to alumni mentorship is small, and we're looking to increase that. But of course, that comes with partnership with alumni relations and building that partnership more. We have about 2,000, 2,100 students on the platform right now. Our goal is to get students answers. What we've been talking about a lot this year is about curiosity, getting students answers around their curiosity about professional and life transitions, internships, university and career questions, and focusing on that mostly for students, but also for alumni. Our goal is we'd love to get to 20% of the student body using it. You know, that idea that once you get to 20%, it's a thing, it's real, and it spreads. So that has been around building relationships and building partnerships over and over.
Awesome. I love the theme on curiosity. I feel like too often students think it's not okay to just be curious, that you got to chat with someone because you're immediately applying to jobs, which is so not the impression we want to give. And you led me to an important next question, which also ties to an obstacle it sounds like a lot of people are having, which is rallying resources behind a program. Could you share with us, like, who on your campus, like, their support was you were trying to rally, and like what were their concerns and how did you address those concerns? Or still continue to address?
For us, I don't think it's surprising to anyone. Our largest partner really with our program is the business school. We have career courses within the business school, within the marketing department and management and accounting and finance, and all of them have some kind of mentorship component in it, whether it's talking about it or making it an assignment, a requirement, or me just showing up in class and talking to them about mentorship. I try, so I meet with those folks a lot. They're great partners to work with. We're just pushing out, trying to get through to everyone else. We have different levels of partnership. We have a pretty strong partnership now with athletics. They're making it actually a requirement for all student athletes at DePaul to do a networking event and also connect with alumni for informational interviews, which is huge for us. And that just comes from relationship building. I have a lot of conversations and connect with folks across the university, getting more involved with liberal arts and social sciences, more with our science and health folks. But I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that the business school are the folks that are partnering with us so closely. I don't necessarily think I think it's a good thing. I don't know if we necessarily always align for the same reasons. I think I'm thinking of it a little more broadly. I think a lot of business faculty think of it as just a means to a job for students. But get them to do it, and the value will come, even if that's not what faculty are pushing.
Yeah, the athletics angle is cool. I mean, I'm sure it's also incredible students, really engaging alumni as well in those conversations. I guess they're maybe digging in a little bit, like, why would someone across campus like not want to promote mentoring to their students? Like, I'm sure they have like legitimate concerns. What are some of those concerns you've heard?
Me to go?
Yeah, please. Yeah. And then I'll put Brandee in the hot seat here.
Yeah, there are a lot of what sometimes referred as like paper and pencil mentorships programs that exist around the campus. And I think part of it is sometimes people are protective of their contacts and fear that they'll be abused, or they will be messaged over and over. They'll be emailed incessantly. That's certainly understandable. And part of it is is building that relationship and helping them to understand this is what we're doing, and being very transparent about how we communicate with alumni and how frequently they're contacted. I also like to put it out to, if it's faculty that are concerned, I like to put it out as, if you are connecting your alumni to our program, that also pull students who may not be in your program to learn more about your program, and maybe they will want to start working with you with a major or minor.
I like that. Very cool. And yeah, for you, Brandee, I mean, Arizona State, huge campus. Like, whose support have you aimed to rally? Is it like your colleagues in alumni advancement, and what have their big concerns? And I know you've been able to bring in others. So like, how did you address those concerns?
Well, the easy answer to who is all of the above. I mean, I think we went after this trying to figure out how do we engage as much of our university as possible in a centralized way, in a centralized platform. And I think really what I agree with Leslie that there definitely some of the challenges were for individual colleges or schools or departments, that feeling of the relationships that they've cultivated possibly over several years, and trying to respect and honor those relationships, but also help share the message of the value, the return on investment for our students, for our alumni, our professionals, our faculty and staff, to be in a place where they have access to more, that more isn't always a bad thing. And that's a very important guiding vision for us here at Arizona State University about access. And that you can have a very high quality education and amazing collegiate experience at a large institution, and we very strategically work to collaborate as much as possible across campus to ensure that that happens for all of our students. When thinking about how we rallied that support, a lot of it had to do with every conversation we have with a college or a school or department. We start with a place of understanding. What are their goals? What's their main focus? What's their main challenge right now? And for a lot right now, retention's a big issue, retention and persistence to graduation. And so that was the driving force behind our conversation, to say how when we come together across campus as all of our colleges and our departments, how can we collectively attack this challenge of retention, and how can mentoring be an incredibly key component to positively impact retention, positively impact that persistence to graduation. So we really took time to understand, for all of our partners trying to come onto the platform, really where were their needs and how do we customize the conversation and utilize a similar tool to have the same impact, but in a very customized and specialized way.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the polling question. What's your primary objective? People have different ones, and that informs what matters. I did quickly just think about, my own experience. If someone in the School of Education from my alma mater, like, I'd love to connect with that person. And so if we have these silos and sense of ownership, like, that's essentially being prevented. I also love the angle on retention, that what if I'm in a program that I don't love, but my bubble and world is only there? And the answer is to talk to someone in a different program, and that would get me reinvigorated. Very cool. So I've got a little bit of a different question. It's a little bit more theoretical. And it's something that on our team struggles with. And is mentor even the right word? And like, why or why not?
Yeah, it's something we battle with on a regular basis. I've gone with, actually, when we met for the users conference for PeopleGrove, we talked a lot about that and what language students actually use. So students use words like advice and conversation, and just talking to alumni. So I'm trying to use more language that students use. So I've tried to remove mentor as many places as possible. I think it's the most accurate word that we've been able to find, but I think it's very loaded for students. So as much as we can talk about connecting with alumni, having conversations with alumni, I think that still hits home what we're going for, without putting this very loaded word on their plate when we have rising anxiety rates with students. For us in particular, we have a third of our students are first gen, half of our students are transfer students. We're trying to just get rid of those barriers to entry, and it's just a big scary word that has a lot of barriers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one way you've done it is the branding of your program. You know,
Yeah.
it's the, alumni sharing knowledge program. So that's a big start right there.
Yeah, we avoid that word altogether in the name.
And for you, Brandee, I guess, is there a different vibe on your campus? I know every campus is different.
Yeah, so we definitely, it's been a hot topic of conversation and still continues to be this day. I think that we definitely, when we took a look at the conversation, we're open and appreciative of what we call just the spectrum of the one-time interaction or connection, all the way to a long-term standing relationship that I think, to Leslie's point, is more of the loaded term of mentor in a lot of cases. I think we have a wide appreciation of many different terms on our campus and at our university. I agree that we are trying to very much utilize language that is meaningful to each of our populations. And we found that in some cases with some of our, especially on our end of our professionals and some of our alumni population and our faculty and staff, the term mentor was the quickest way to describe and help somebody understand what we were looking for, but we often don't leave it there. And we try to help convey the message that it doesn't have to be a long-term interaction. We utilize the term connection and connecting a lot. I think we found a lot of value, and that resonates a lot with our student population. And I think internally, because this is a very higher ed thing to do, to use language that's meaningful to us as staff or faculty, but not always to students. But we really focus on the concept of that intentional and meaningful connection. And that can take place in one email chain back and forth. And that can also take place in a semester-long, weekly engagement, an hour apiece between a student and alumni, or a student and professional. And so I think that we've really tried at Arizona State to ensure that when we use the term mentor, if that is the term we're using at the time, that we're always giving that caveat to the scale and the breadth of what we mean by that term, and ensuring people understand that it can be anything. It's just that intentional and meaningful connection that happens.
Yeah, kind of. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was even just going to set a quick plug for Julia Freeland Fisher's book, who you know, I'm reading right now, Unlocking Innovations That Expand Students' Networks. And she talks a lot about strong ties versus weak ties. And this idea that just those one-off conversations, those weak ties, actually open up the variety, the diversity of options and ideas and connections that don't exist with those long-term communities that you already have a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, it almost feels like maybe mentor is a word that works for mentors, for alumni, or maybe some population, but for students, it's like, whoa, that's a serious commitment. So it's, maybe it's a success team, maybe it's like just an advisor, a coach, but something that resonates with people. So I know at the beginning I mentioned that there's this mentoring gap. We know that these relationships are impactful, but yet at the same time, not enough students leave college feeling like they have it. Why do you think that's the case? Like, what are some reasons that exists? Like, anything that comes to mind there?
Leslie, you want to go ahead?
You go ahead, Brandee.
No, so for us, I mean, I think that when we think of gap, and to add into your point, the piece about that not every student is graduating with that interaction or that connection, I think there's 1,000 reasons why, and so much of it has to do sometimes with just right timing and access. And I think that that's really something we're taking a look at, is how is this constantly being talked about and woven into the fabric of our university. Something here in our office that is one of our long-term mission and goals here is to create a career ecosystem on the campus. And what that means is everything career and internship, we're not a place or a destination. It's completely woven into the fabric of the university. And I think that mentoring and connections is a component of that. We really look at, you know, the importance of these connections through the lens of that career readiness, that making sure a student, once they graduate and they leave the university, that they're as prepared as possible for that next step, whatever that might be: graduate school, international service, moving on to a full-time opportunity. It can be many, many things. So I think for us, that gap is really how do we take advantage and think about where are all the places that it makes a lot of sense to plug the concept of connecting and mentoring in, because I think that just that knowledge and awareness of it being a tool and something to participate in that's of value to our students, I think that that's where our gap is. So I think that it's for us, it's talking about it and getting it out there in as many places as possible.
For sure.
Yeah, I think it's part of the culture in different places. Like you, Adam, you showed that data early on. Where is it a part of the strategic plan? And it's so overwhelmingly part of a strategic plan for private schools. It's very much part of a plan for Ivy. It's well known, I would say, in more elite schools, and certainly accepted and part of the game and part of the expectation. So where we can understand, I love exactly what you're saying about the ecosystem. That's something we talk about too. Actually, when my supervisor came in and she was interviewing, she referred to it. She said, we have to be Neo. We have to be in the matrix. We have to be Neo. We're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. So we have to be just part of the fabric. We have to be Neo. And that's, I think that's part of it. It has to be just kind of understood as this is what you do. I mentioned earlier, there's this rising anxiety with students. I think the New York Times in January said it was something around 63% of students are reporting overwhelming anxiety. So and that's up 15% in the last 5 years, 6 years. So it's tremendous. So it can be very scary to have conversations. We see with our numbers, we see what's referred to as near peers, you know, the recent graduates. The most popular mentors reached out to our 2017, 16, 15, 14, 13. They're reaching out to somebody like them because it's less scary. One thing we've done is we're just trying to start the appearance of alumni on campus, trying to get them involved in as many ways as we can, just as, hey, I'm not a scary person. We actually started an event called Cookies with Alumni, and it was an idea that came up from a group of freshmen that we worked with. And they said, can we just have alumni giving us cookies and lemonade? Is that something you can do? I said, yeah, that's something we can do. And it's been incredibly popular because they just walk up and it goes to that curiosity question. They say, would you like a cookie? What are you curious about when it comes to jobs and your major and internships? And every single time a student has something they're curious about.
Yeah, it removes, it's the icebreaker, which is the hardest part.
Yeah.
There were two things that struck me. One, my youngest sister is at Tulane currently. She's a sophomore. And when you mentioned anxiety and stress, career is part of it. She frequently reaches out to me about, like, do I need to have an internship yet? Like all these, like, everyone's wearing suits and interviewing for finance jobs. Should I be doing that? And I was, no, if you're not interested in it. The other thing that when I thought of like how to be Neo, there's an example that I was like thrilled by, and I can take very little credit for, is one of our partners really got a professor to utilize their alumni network in the classroom. So the professor would literally make, as part of the assignment, get the perspective of an industry professional on this assignment and topic. And that was really compelling on both sides, because for the recipients, it was a thought-provoking and meaningful conversation about something that they wanted to talk about. It wasn't just, hey, look at my resume, or what's the
Yeah,
difference between X and Y job. And for the student, it like was easy because they had a reason to reach out in the first place and be curious.
yeah,
Um, but I give that example because that's like it's happening because of the community and connections career has formed, but making its way without, forcing itself on, a
yeah.
professor and so forth. Um, as a kind of secondary question, something I often see is it's not hard to find a network of people that will pay it forward, raise their hand, and offer to help.
Yeah.
The much bigger challenge is uh, giving students the confidence to be curious or the confidence to break the ice. And I know you mentioned this in-person event. Are there other things that you've tried, whether it's like coaching students or just different tactics to simply help students break the ice? Anything that we can share there?
Mhm. I I found that at least within the last couple years, I found a lot of students saying, just tell me exactly what to say. Just tell me exactly what to do. Give me a step-by-step thing. And what I found is really valuable is I've broken some things down to 3 points. So how to, we use communication psychology to talk about how to send a request that gets read and people are interested in reading. So we talk about them, you, time bound. Make the first sentence about them, never use I, me, my. Uh, quick sentence about you, and then make it time bound. Because if you say, I'll talk to you, can I talk to you sometime? You go in a sometime pile. But if you give them something to hook into, they can talk to you. And I talk about 3 points to an informational interview, warm up. If you ask, what do you like about DePaul? You can answer that question. What do you not like about DePaul? You can answer that question. If you're reaching out to a DePaul alumni, they have an answer to those questions too. It starts your liking, it starts your things in common. Then you get down to the curiosity questions. What do you really want to know? Letting them know there's some things that might seem scary to ask, but actually people are cool with answering. Like people are actually willing to answer questions like not how much do you make, but what are entry level jobs like? Have you heard? Is there a range in your organization? What are entry level jobs like? Or what's the stuff you're really curious about? And then the big step that alumni love to do that students rarely do is tap into their network. Hey, we've had this great conversation. I love talking to you. I know you're working for a Fortune 500. Do you have any friends who are doing a similar job who work for a nonprofit? Who do you recommend I talk to now that we've had this conversation? And it opens up uh, for you to go even wider. And then I do a 3-step thank you as well.
Real quick, I mean, love the framework. And how have you? You're a superhero, but I'm sure there are other entry points or advisors that students meet.
Yeah.
Have you shared that framework with others? Is
Yep.
this
Yep.
like a known framework?
It's a known framework. It's partially took it from the effective business communication course. That's a requirement for all marketing students. I teach it that as well. I'm an adjunct professor in that, and my mentor is the guy who created the course. So I use that, and again, it's Neo, right? We package this off. I packaged it as part of an assignment. So if there's a faculty member who showed interest in using an assignment, it goes off to them. We have a Hire DePaul blog. It's part of the blog. If students are searching about informational interviews, it's something that our career advisors work with students on. It's on one-pagers. As much as I can shove it out, right? Like, yes, it's definitely, I do it in presentations, but
For sure. Yeah.
pass it around.
And yeah, and as you know, we love it. We try and incorporate it into the tool because
Yeah.
it's intimidating. It's like, what
Hmm.
do I even say? The answer is, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just
Yeah.
be authentic, curious, and yeah, kind
Hmm.
of go from there.
Exactly.
And Brandee, what about for you? Has there been
Mhm.
any tactics to spur student activity inject a steroid of confidence or anything like that?
Yeah, so we
That was a
definitely.
bad analogy.
Well, I will say that, to echo a lot of what Leslie said, is that a lot of that coaching and a lot of the tools, so I won't repeat that piece, but I will say that something that's been increasingly successful for us is, I think so often, and we were guilty of this, of really tying mentorship and connections to career. And that's important and it's necessary, but also opening the door for those connections can be about, how do I talk to somebody who was in my shoes 5 years ago and how did they manage it all? I'm not ready to talk about 3 years from now when I graduate. I need to talk about, I'm juggling a full-time job. I have 2 kids. I want to get engaged on campus or more engaged with my university, but I also want to stay up with my grades. So even that conversation of life and how to be successful and how to manage it, those are all steps to being successful and ready for when you graduate. But I think that by opening that door and saying, you don't necessarily always have to talk to somebody about what your end goal is. You can talk to people about now. What's your challenges now? And back to the point that Leslie made too about anxiety, there is increasing anxiety for our students. And so, so much of our partnership at the university is across departments and student service units to think about how do we work with our counseling services that's seeing this massive rise in students coming in and needing services, and we can actually be a component of that. Career is, but how do we bring connecting and mentoring into the conversation in a space that for many students it's like, whoa, I'm not ready to talk about 3 years, 4 years from now. I just need somebody to help me talk about today. And a mentor on a platform like this can be that. It doesn't always have to be, that conversation about internship or career. It can just be about how do I succeed today? How do I manage it all today? And I think we've seen a lot of success and a lot of faculty and staff embracing that in addition to the career, why it's valuable to career and after they leave ASU too. Because it's all about what's the immediate need, what's the immediate challenge, what do you need now, and how do we help you deal with what you need now?
Yeah, it sounds like there's a big educational component. I'm almost imagining this timeline from freshman to senior year and sharing with others, here are common topics along that continuum. Like that might be helpful to chat with someone about. Study abroad, what student groups to be involved in. We don't have to just make it a, job only. I just keep thinking about things my sister calls me about, which is study abroad right now. It's stressful. She's, if I go study abroad, does that mean I'm not going to be able to get a job or on-campus recruiting? It's, a lot of things students are thinking about, which again, I think create more meaningful, authentic relationships with alumni. Like that gets them to want to spend more time. So another question. What are, like, sometimes, let me rephrase that. Meeting in person is awesome. Grabbing coffee, yes, we're in this room and I feel like this is great. So what are your thoughts on, like, does these connections have to be in person? Can they be digital? Are there benefits of, like, it not being in person?
I think I'll speak from ASU's perspective. We have a pretty massive online population. We're tracking towards 35,000. So digital is really important, but we take the spin on it too to say we have students all across the country and internationally. So we put a lot of effort into finding alumni and professionals that are also all across the country and internationally too. So we value the in-person connection and we know that there's so much that can come from that. But we equally value the digital connection because for many of our students, that's often where the connection has to start, and that's what they're comfortable. So seeing the digital connection for a lot of our students as a launching pad, that they can start there, especially in that place of not necessarily knowing how to connect with somebody or what to say, being behind that screen gives them a little bit of safety to start from, to prepare, to think a little bit further, and then maybe they launch to the in-person if it's possible. But I think that, we spend a lot of time valuing both at an equal level to ensure that, our students and our alumni really understand that it's intentional and meaningful. I go back to that piece of just having that connection and being curious. I love that terminology too. That's all purposeful, and any of it is okay. So wherever you feel comfortable starting, just start. Just go for it, and then go down the pathway that feels most comfortable for you. We certainly, again, we have a lot of tools for students to utilize to launch that digital connection. And I think for a lot of our students, the digital is what expands their world. We have a lot of, echoing Leslie too, of a lot of first-gen students, a massive population of international students. We're again tracking towards 13,000 international students this year. So that is, for us, really important that people have that breadth of access, and technology in that digital environment is what opens that world far more than who could be 15 minutes down the street and can, meet up at a local Starbucks or come onto campus and meet in our student union. So for us, both are so important, and we try to value both at the same level.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what Brandee's saying, and I like that idea. This is your starting point, and it is very comfortable to start behind that screen. I would say we want everyone to be trying as many ways as they can. I will say one of the challenges of just digital or just that option is ghosting.
Mm-hmm.
We see that happen quite a bit, where a student will just send out a request and can easily back away because they've not met in person and they've not connected face to face. It's really hard to be in the space with someone and then ghost them completely, let them go, not follow up with them. That's something we're trying to combat more with students. Is we've played around with some digital media stuff too.
I guess on the flip side, ghosting in person is probably more ruinous. So
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I like, the ability to, expand beyond your immediate city. And I think there is an interesting point on safety and confidence that at least when we're here, I at least get to have my cheat sheet, which makes it a little bit less intimidating, and it kind of helps me practice in a little bit of a safer environment. And then safety, purely from the perspective of real safety. It's safer here. Okay, I've got probably the toughest question. At least I think it's tough. And it's, how do we collectively or on your campus think about measuring impact? What is success for this?
I think for us, again, back to the point of working with all of our partners across the university, it's understanding what success for them is. So those challenges or their goals that they're facing right now and needing to work towards, and understanding mentoring is a piece of that and measuring that component towards that. So knowing with one of our partner colleges, first year retention was a big issue. This year we partnered with them to launch a peer-to-peer mentoring program through the platform. And specifically that was a part of their set of goals of what they were going to utilize to increase first year retention. So for us, we are invested in that as a partner, that, utilizing mentoring in this platform, in this program, to be able to increase their first year retention rate. So for us, and I could go through many examples of that, but that really is what we're looking at, that collectively, that measurable impact. We're going to pull a lot of data points that aren't just interactions on a platform, aren't just requests sent or meeting requests sent. It's actually going to be, where was this infused into different programs and departments to be utilized towards a specific goal in that area, and then what do we measure in those goals, knowing that this was an important component or a piece of that.
Really cool. Leslie, how about for you, where the focus, I mean, I'm sure retention is always in a component, but I'm sure there are other things as well to think about.
Yeah, what I'm trying to connect more with is lately is a push to connect it to our career outcomes data. It's not, it's something all universities need to report out. So it's something I'm trying to get my hands on so we can play around with the raw data. Obviously, you can't make too many assumptions, but we can say of the students involved in our platform, of the students involved in our program, this is what their career outcomes look like compared to the rest of the university, compared to the rest of their colleges.
Mm.
Uh, Retention's big. I will say something Adam and I talked about briefly. I went to a luncheon with our vice president of enrollment management, and he said to me, it's very anecdotal, but he said to me in passing, you know, Leslie, we know if people are going to give money if they're mentors. So it's certainly by theories of fundraising and involvement that tends to track. That makes sense. So that's certainly part of the game, and that's how I can get in the room sometimes. It's how we can get more students engaged is by pushing that it brings money to the school. But again, it's not something I can track. I'm not under advancement. I'm under enrollment management and marketing. Uh, Something we've talked about before that's really hard to measure, but it's how we can show impact is trust. What is their trust with alumni? What is their trust with their university? If this is a program that's offered through their university, do I feel like my university cares about me? Adam talked about the Gallup Purdue Index, where they talk about, am I cared about? It's a really important part about if a student feels like their education is worth it, if they're successful after, how they're rating their overall well-being. It's really important if you feel cared about, and that's a hard thing to track. And it's probably one of the most important things. It's a lot of qualitative data.
For sure. There was a question that someone in the audience submitted earlier that I think is really topical here, Leslie, that I just wanted to ask. So one is other, colleagues across campus feeling, rather territorial on just like their relationships and that data. And so one of the questions was, how do you handle like getting access to names and individuals, alumni that you can even invite, if that makes sense? Like,
Yes,
how do you?
absolutely.
Mhm.
I'll give you an example of what just happened to me. I have been working with the History of Art and Architecture program for the past year and a half, and the head of their department has placed our information on their class websites and put things out on social media. She had alumni come to an event, and I knew that was happening, and I said, oh, I'd really love to be there and welcome the alumni and let them know it's possible. And she said, yeah, well, maybe you can come in and give us 5 to 10 minutes and just talk about the program really briefly. I showed up. She had a very small number of students, and I just had a real conversation with students about mentorship and what they're curious about. The next day, I got an email that thanked me, and she said, here's my running list of my alumni. Here's the Excel spreadsheet I have. If you want to reach out to these folks and let them know about your program, that would be great. So it's building that trust. She wasn't going to give it until she saw that I was being very transparent and that what I wanted for students, what my intention was for students, and what my intention was for the program.
There was an unintentional nugget that you also shared there, which is there are others across campus that have relationships with alumni. It's not just fundraising.
Yeah,
Sometimes
absolutely.
it's the individual school that has an even warmer list
Mm-hmm.
because their outreach has been of a different kind.
Yeah.
So that might have been an unintentional
Yeah.
nugget shared there.
Yeah.
And Brandee, did you have anything to add to like how do you get others to like, I guess, open up their contacts or relationships to you?
Yeah, I think thinking about utilizing all the data you have. One of the things that's been a strong point of conversation that we have with folks, and again, back to the piece about how do we convince people to come into the system, and the idea of more being a good thing, has a lot to do with not the direct connection between, degree programs and certain career paths, and we actually pull data out of our other platform that we utilize for career management, to show career interests, and to be able to utilize and show one particular school, well, this is the self-reported data from your students about the areas they have interest in. And then even taking that data to another school and saying, you have a lot of alumni who are currently showing and indicating they're working in XYZ industry, but your students have an interest in these industries. So it's almost that data sharing to show that self-reported information of interest, and how if we all get ourselves together into one spot, it allows for access and interaction across versus in that siloed manner, which it's a win. It's a win for you as a college or a school to say, I got our alumni in, I got our students in, and now they're interacting with alumni and students across the university in much more meaningful, exploratory, curious ways, than keeping them in that silo. So we look at how do we use any bit or piece of data or information we have at the university to make that case sometimes to our partners.
I love that. It's like data-driven demands leading to supply. Our students want to learn about what it's like to go to med school. Help us. Like there's a captive audience. I did check the time here. I'm going to put you under the hot seat one last time, and that's, I guess, if in 30 seconds or something fast, if there was like one takeaway that, I guess you wish you'd have known before you like launched into this, what would that have been?
Leslie?
Rock, paper, scissors for who goes first.
For me, this big key lately has been curiosity. I've been saying it a lot. It is something that everyone can connect to. It is a question you can ask alumni. It is a question you can ask students, and it's a really great way to build a bridge. I can do with faculty, I can do with different departments, and it makes sense to everyone.
Awesome.
I'd say for us, the lesson learned that I wish I had known sooner was how to customize your message to your different populations more strategically from the get-go. I think that if we had learned some of that and approached our alumni, our professionals, our faculty and staff populations a little bit different, same core message, but using different verbiage and terminology and specializing it, that's a lesson learned that took us more time because of that. So if we had known that at the beginning, I think we would have been in a quicker pace of getting launched.
Yeah, in business jargony terms, it's what's each stakeholder's unique value proposition, and hone in on it. I really appreciate the time that you've spent, the open and honest conversation, because it's so easy to find both of your emails on the internet. If people search your name, I'm going to post it here in the chat box. And of course, if others, I hope, want to continue the conversation, that they can reach out. And yeah, I really appreciate everyone's time on this. And there were some things mentioned, slides, Gallup data, even a great book that I'll follow up and share more details on. But thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.